What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Today I've got one of the craziest entitled parent stories I've ever seen. Entitled mum almost drowns her daughter in a swamp. Before we start, a little backstory. I was about in my late 20s and worked as a guide in a conservation area in the north of Europe during summer. Basically, I'd take groups of about 10 people and guide them through a very nice trail through a natural forest. The people were usually tourists from around the world and liked to see the nature at its best. I'd tell them about the animals that lived in the forest, plants, landscape, and its history. The trail we'd walk through was about 3 kilometers long, so little under 2 miles. The trail would lead to a nice little clearing with an outdoor fireplace where my co-worker would be waiting and we'd eat some food, and the hotel's minibus could come pick us up, as there was a wide trail that was often used for maintenance or things like this. About a half of the walk, so about a mile, went through a swamp, and we'd walk on duckboards. If you don't know what duckboards are, they are basically wooden planks put on trails like this for people to walk on, so they wouldn't damage the nature or get hurt themselves in the swamp. These are very comfortable to walk on, and 2 adults can pass each other sideways if needed. Though depending where you are, some might be old and broken, but nothing too bad. Ticks and mosquitoes would also be a pain in the butt, as the population is always at its biggest in the summer. Because of all these things, anytime anyone booked a guided walk via the hotel I worked for, they were given a little information guide, like how to dress and what to take with you and how to prepare. This included the suggestion of wearing long pants because of the ticks, comfortable shoes, taking a water bottle with you, wearing sunscreen, sunglasses and a hat, etc. The slip also showed a map of the area, the distance, and a suggestion not to take very young kids with you if you aren't ready to carry them. Most kids get tired after a mile. So our story begins in the late of July on a bright sunny day. I get to the beginning of the trail where the group was meant to gather. My clothing was pretty standard, so a blue t-shirt, dark green thigh pocket trousers, hiking boots, a white cap, sunglasses and a backpack. The walk was set to start at 3 PM and I was glad to see the people arrive just on time. Everyone started checking in with me that they had showed up and so on. It seemed like a great day, but my joy was going to be taken from me. The moment an entitled mother and her entitled daughter stepped in my line of sight, I felt my heart sink. The entitled daughter had shorts, a t-shirt and sneakers, seemingly around 7 years old as she was pretty short. The entitled mum, on the other hand, wasn't the most stereotypical Karen, but she had the attitude and sunglasses. Otherwise, she was dressed in very expensive looking clothes, though still covering her legs as advised. The entitled mum gave me a little attitude, although people do get a little bit annoyed in the heat sometimes, so I just got over it and we started walking. The trail we started walking on was wide enough to fit 4 to 5 people side by side, so the group could walk comfortably pretty close to each other, but still giving each other space. I was telling them about the plants, specifically the berries growing next to the trail, when one person in the group had a question if it would be okay to taste them. I showed the group the wild blueberries and strawberries, what they look like and so on, reminding them to never just eat any berries without asking, as we have a few poisonous ones that look exactly like blueberries. After that little thing, we continued walking and everything was pretty much fine. I explained some questions to them about how the ice age defined the ground and such, reminding people to keep taking sips from their water bottles. All the time I was hearing the entitled daughter whine to her mum that she was tired, and the entitled mum huffing and puffing, trying to keep up at a very nice and slow pace. I stopped the group a few times just to let her catch up with us and breathe a little without making it awkward for her. I also had to ask the entitled daughter multiple times to turn off the music from her game as she was playing it so loud others on the walk couldn't hear what I was saying. It was also advised not to bring electronics or to keep them secure in a bag, as the hotel wasn't going to pay for any broken ones. But for some reason, this kid had a phone with her. We got to see some woodpeckers, a hare, and a few reindeer though, which was mind-blowing for people who had grown up in big cities and such. But the entitled daughter didn't like the squirrel she saw and started throwing rocks and pine cones at it that she found on the trail. When I told her to stop, the only answer I got from her was her sticking her tongue out of her mouth and "You can't tell me what to do. Mum says it's fine for me to do that." I had to tell the entitled mum to control her daughter or I'd call some workers to get them off the walk. She gave me a death glare but didn't have the energy to fight back. She was covered in sweat and just told her daughter to stop and walk. I was pleased with this, but I could hear her mumble something under her breath to her daughter. When we got close to the swamp and we saw the duckboards, I stopped the group to explain things. The next part we're going through is a natural swamp. There are the planks, and I'm asking you to keep walking only on them, as the flora is more delicate and can be damaged if you walk on it. Bog holes are also a thing you should be aware of. Normally they aren't that deep, but this is one of the deepest swamps in the country, meaning a bog hole can be 2 meters or about 6.5 feet deep. So please stay on the duckboards to keep yourself and the nature in good shape. The entitled mum seemed pleased for the hard surface, as the forest floor was softer and not consistent, naturally. We started walking on the planks, and you could tell they were old. Some were rotten, but not too rotten not to be walked on. Those planks are always replaced for obvious reasons. I had started talking to my group more about beard moss and how clear the air was. But that's when there was a loud splash and an ear-curdling scream, followed by more screeching and screams for help. That was the moment I realized the entitled mum and her entitled daughter weren't with the group anymore. Everyone ran on the planks back to where we were coming from to see what was going on. The entitled mum and the entitled daughter had left the duckboards, and the entitled daughter was stuck in the swamp. They had gotten off, walked further into the swamp, and found a clearing. No plants, a few small pines growing around this small place covered in moss, and a tiny pond next to the moss. But the thing was, the moss was covering a bog hole. As it had rained all last week pretty heavily, it also had a ton of water in it. Normally, if an adult would step on something similar, they might just get their leg stuck, and with a little help or something to grab onto, they'd be able to pull themselves out. But with a child, it's much more dangerous, as they often try to kick themselves out, only getting themselves sucked more in. Also, because the entitled daughter had probably jumped on the moss, both her legs were stuck. As soon as the moss broke beneath her, the bog hole had sucked her already waist deep. The entitled mum was screaming at her daughter how she needed to swim out, only to worsen the situation, as bog holes aren't the same as the quicksand she was thinking about, and you shouldn't even swim in quicksand. If you kick and try to wiggle your legs, this will just create bubbles, making you get sucked in deeper. I grew up next to a swamp, and as I helped my mum pick some berries and such there, I was taught how to move around in a swamp ever since I can remember. Adrenaline kicked in, and I started screaming at the entitled mum and her entitled daughter. Don't struggle or kick, it'll just make you fall deeper. Hold still. EM, go to the duckboards right now, follow your own steps, and go by the trees. But then the entitled mum said, just shut up and help me, you effing female dog. Why didn't you warn us about these things? It's all your fault. You don't tell me what to do. If she stays still, she'll drown. I know, I've gotten stuck in quicksand. And after those words came just incoherent screeching and curse words. I jumped off the duckboards and ran down to the bog hole. The entitled daughter was screaming murder, getting sucked deeper because she was still trying to kick herself free from the mud. And as she had sunk deeper, the now muddy water was reaching her shoulders. I was and still am glad that I invested into a backpack that turns into a seat, because now I put it on the moss close to the edge and closer to the entitled daughter. It gave me the opportunity to get close enough to ED to pull her out and put my weight on a bigger part of the surface. Her entitled mum was screaming at me the whole time as I grabbed her daughter's hand, backing up and pulling her out by her arms. This caused the little demon to scream at me and spit at me as I was hurting her when pulling her out. The moment I got most of her upper body out of the water, I grabbed her around her armpits, almost like hugging her to pull her out. This little idiot of a child let out even louder screams, trying to wiggle out of my grip, all the while I was pulling her out from a very disgusting and slow death. She started scratching me, and I felt how my hair was pulled in an aggressive manner, and the entitled mum was screaming, "You effing paedophile, get your hands off my daughter's chest. You just hurt her arms when pulling her out, you abusive sick idiot." I couldn't let go of the daughter, as if I did to fight her mum, she would be sucked right back in. This meant I had my hair pulled until I got ED pulled out of the bog hole. I fell back when she finally got free, and the moment I fell to the ground, I let her go to her mum, covered in mud, missing one of her shoes that the bog hole had taken instead of her. I grabbed my backpack that had sunken almost totally and faced the entitled mum, who slapped me. My hair was still in her hand as she had pulled so hard some came out. "I'll sue you for sexually assaulting my daughter and attempted murder, you freaking sick paedophile. Now my daughter will have trauma and can't sleep at night. Are you freaking proud? I should just push you in, you effing POS. You'll also pay me for the phone." Because apparently the entitled daughter had dropped her phone in there too. I'm not a violent person, but I've never wanted to throw a person headfirst into a bog hole more and watch them drown. I was covered in mud, my backpack was covered in mud, and now the entitled mum too was covered in mud, as she proceeded to carry her child like a baby who was still wailing like a banshee. I called called my colleague about what happened on a walkie-talkie when we were close enough. He had his own cell phone with him so he could call the hotel / our boss / the police or anyone else. When we got there were the hotel's minibus and 2 police officers accompanied with my co-worker and my boss. I'll save you from most of the boring details, but the entitled mum basically tried to form some BS story in which I encouraged them to explore and then inappropriately touched her daughter. She tried to make me seem like I was the worst person in the world, but there was my saving grace. One of the tour members had filmed the whole thing. Every second since the entitled mum started screaming at me. I still remember her face, trying to look so smug with all the colour drained away. Long story short, the entitled mum was arrested for endangering her child's life, assault, and a few other charges if I remember correctly. To be honest, the legal stuff is pretty much all a blurry memory, as I had my lawyer work out most of the things because the entitled mum lived in a different country and such. I truly hope that someone more responsible got the custody of the entitled daughter, but it didn't belong to me at all, so I honestly don't know. So, entitled mum and your entitled daughter, may you have a happy life somewhere the F away from me, and just please be better human beings. Holy heck, what a roller coaster that was. Oh my goodness me. Alright, you know what? Straight away, there's gonna be a poll in the top right hand corner of your screens right now. Now, this is a pretty crazy question I'm about to ask, but I want you guys to answer it completely honestly. If you were OP in this story, would you have let the child drown? I can't quite believe I'm saying that, but after everything that OP went through trying to save this entitled daughter, I don't know anymore. Look, I'm not going to give my answer on this one, but I just want to hear your thoughts, so vote in the top right hand corner right now, yes or no. Actually, you know what, I'll leave you one more option as well. I would have been close, but I wouldn't have done it. That's your final option, so the final option is going to be close. I guess the final thing for me to say is, well done to OP, you handled this amazingly. I can't quite imagine what you went through, but wow, how did you manage to keep your cool? That is insane. Honestly, it's people like you that should be leading countries, not Trump, not Boris Johnson. You handled that incredibly well. Final thing to say is, I wish there was access to that video that one of the tour members took. That would be incredible to see what really happened. I've actually commented below this story on r/EntitledParents. Please, do you have that footage? I would love to see it. If I get a reply, I will let you guys all know, probably over on my Twitter, so go and follow me over there to keep up with this story. Anyway, that is going to be the end of this episode. That was truly incredible. I don't really know what to say. Wow. If you want more like this, the video on screen right now is just as crazy. It's probably the second most crazy video that I've ever made. With that being said, like the video, comment your opinions down below, and subscribe for daily Reddit content on my channel. I'll also see you guys same place, same time tomorrow for a brand new upload. Wow, I need to rest after that one.